So let's begin to look a bit further at the nature of culture in organizations and churches. And in the previous lessons, we've reflected on how each leader and member is responsible for cultivating in the words we speak, in the presentation, in organization, a culture, a feeling, a sense, an atmosphere, a physical structure in which people can thrive or be excluded or left out. If you step into a house or a family, every house or family is going to have a different feel. And we need to be generous and gracious. Some don't have quite as much money or the resources. Every culture often has some beauty about it. We might also speak and participate in and attend different cultures. And so there are different people from different backgrounds and different parts of the country who may have different cultures. There may be some from rural areas and there may be some from city areas. I remember my wife and I were once asked to attend and speak briefly at a group who gathered together, and this group were all motorbike riders, and they were dressed in leathers and such forth. I felt very out of place. I didn't have a black leather jacket, and I didn't ride up on a motorbike. I came in my car, and so there was a culture about where they were. On other occasions, I've gathered with people from different backgrounds, and there have been different cultures. We need to be sensitive to the different cultures. Over the last year or two, I've gone to 3 or 4 different schools, and each school has a different culture. One I went to was a very Christian school, and it was like angels. They were quiet and gentle and softly spoken. I went to another school and it was wild. And so different places can have different cultures, and the leader helps to establish those cultures. As I said before, I recently went to 2 different churches, part of the same church group, but one was a big, noisy, huge church with lots of resources and singers, and the other in the same group was a smaller, quieter family church. So different in the culture. And you could participate in different businesses. They could have different cultures. They have a different feel, a different atmosphere. They cultivate and communicate a different feel. And the leader has a responsibility to develop that culture. And one of the ways in which they do that is that we can build culture through the stories we tell. And so once a week, you might meet with people or more often. And it's important to be prepared with what is the mission statement and the story that we tell. Recently, I've been able to participate in a group, New Life Church Robina, and it's interesting. Any of the churches that we go to would have a statement about what they're about. And this statement is they want more people to be more like Jesus, and they want a place where people can thrive. They list their values and their vision. That is, these are the stories that they tell about themselves. And here, their values are genuine love. So they place an emphasis, and they speak this often, once a week, once a month, they would go through. These are the values that we hold to. Scriptural discernment, that is, they're Bible-based. Empowering leadership, that is, they're leaders who serve, who seek to empower everyone who's involved. An adventurous faith. It's not just quiet and passive, and this clearly appeals to the young people. It's adventurous. Fervent prayer, who believe God will answer and God will guide. And creative worship that's dynamic. And so they tell stories about what they're setting out to do, to bring change in society, to bring multiplication and many more churches, to bring innovation that includes the use of new technologies, to bring leadership that's pioneering, and to bring transformation and formation that's going to bring change into people's lives. So this is just one church that I've recently visited and spent time at and seen the difference they make. And we could look at other churches also. And so there are other churches nearby. We could look at them and they each one tell a story. And so, what is the story? Can I get you to now write down? What is the story you could tell that would inspire others? What are four aspects of the story? So if you were to emphasize aspects of the story, some of this could come from the Bible. And so there could be passages in the Bible that speak. Some could be the vision, the goals that you're moving towards. Some could be relational, which could speak about love and values that you share and show. And we have the fruits of the Spirit. Some could speak about the aims that you want to move towards. So, can I get you all to write down, if you're telling a story about what your group or church or music group, women's group, youth group are about, what are some of the things that you could tell? And it's important to communicate these often and to communicate them well and to clarify them. And it's also important to listen. That is, are the people likely to identify and move with the story? If you're leading a young people, you don't want to be sharing an old people's story. If you're leading old people, you don't want to be sharing a story that matches the young people. The story's got to be appropriate to the people you're working with and leading. Think about the story you could tell that would inspire others to participate in the group that you lead. One of the reasons people come on board and participate is because they identify with the excitement and the interest in the story you tell. At times, I've met with people who are part of a music group and they tell a story about the music that they are involved in. Other times, I've met with people who talk about music writing and practice. And others, I've met with people who are art and creativity. And each one inspires others by talking about what they're involved in. And in churches, we talk about what is it that draws together people? Why are they there? Every group or organization has a culture and a story and a message. And when a person walks into that group, they often feel part of that group or less a part of that group. They feel included and they can identify with it. Organisations often have a motto that describes what they are about as an organisation. Denning wrote a book, The Art of the Corporate Narrative, in which he described the stories and narratives that organisations tell. And in this, he sought to guide people into effective storytelling. So Stephen Denning, the Leader's Guide to Storytelling, in which he sought to describe the ways in which a leader can inspire and encourage and lead through the story they tell about what the organisation is about, what it's setting out to achieve. So Denning's guide to giving a narrative and a story seeks to communicate what the organisation is about, what it's seeking to do. And so you can use the story of your group to motivate people, and you can say, our church is going to reach people this year with the salvation message. Our church is going to help people who have needs this year. It's going to feed hungry people. It's going to provide clothing for people. So one of the ways we tell stories is to motivate. Sometimes we tell the story of someone who's joined and been inspired. Secondly, we tell stories to build trust as we communicate who we are. That is, we say we have been meeting here for a number of years and we have gathered people in who found hope and life in Jesus, and you share that one with another. Thirdly, we use stories to build trust in our group. That is, our church is known for, our organisation is known for, our youth group is known for. Fourthly, we transmit and communicate our values. That is, this church is focused on love and caring and concern and listening. Fifthly, you can describe the ways in which the people work together. And you can say, we are a group that includes and we are a group that coordinates and cooperates. Number 6, you can share knowledge. That is, you can say, we're not a group who hold the knowledge and information. We share knowledge of music. We share knowledge of outreach. We share one with another. 7, that is, we are not a group who gossip or attack. We don't even speak negatively of other groups. We're a group that communicate the positive love and hope that we have in God and Jesus. We don't attack. We don't do the work of the enemy. Number 8, we have a shared vision. That is, our goal is to build 1, 2, or 3 new churches over the next 3 years. Our goal is to raise up new leaders by equipping them. So share your vision. There is power in communicating the story that you tell. So if you've not written down already, write down, leaders communicate through the story they tell. A positive story that builds people up, that encourages, that clarifies what the group is about. Deal and Kennedy talk about corporate culture, and in their discussion of corporate culture, they share some insights into different cultures. Firstly, they describe that some groups are so gentle and soft that there may not be so much happening. They're a soft group. And then there are other groups that are a rough, tough group. That's a culture. So there can be different cultures. Some cultures are groups that move more quickly. Others have a culture that moves more slowly. So there can be differences. Some work longer hours. Some listen more and take more care, and they are supporting people more. So Deal and Kennedy speak about these different cultures, and it's important to be clear about the culture that you have and also the values you have, and to work with one another to understand the appreciation that each one has for the culture that you're cooperating with and working with. These cultures motivate people who have similar aims to move in the same direction. They'll separate those out who have very different values and views from those who have lesser values and views. I remember once I went to see the dentist, and the dentist started drilling in my mouth to repair my tooth and asked a question what I did. And I said I was involved in a church. And the dentist was quite excited. And the dentist said to me, he too was involved in a church. And I said, our church believed in exciting people with Hillsong Christian songs with guitars. And he was very sad. He said his church, they don't use music, they sing without musical instruments. And they sing in Latin, in a very old-fashioned language, in Latin. And I realized his culture was very different to my culture. I said to him, "How many people go to your church?" And he said, "Numbers don't matter." Obviously, there weren't many people went to his church, whereas there were a lot went to the church I attended. And so differences in culture reflect differences in value, and obviously people who wanted a church like his would go to his, and people who wanted a church more like the one I was attending would come to the one I was attending. So different people attend different churches, and it's important that people are clear about what's the sort of church they offer. You might find that in shops too. Some shops present in a certain way, and then other shops present in a different way. They have a different culture, and it's important to be clear amongst all the people who work there, what is the culture that our organisation or shop is about? What are the values that we hold? Motivation comes from being with like-minded people, doing like-minded things, motivated by like-minded motivations. We work together when we're clear about what our culture is, what our values are, what the stories are that we are telling. What are the values that the groups you're a part of, that you want to be a part of? What are the values that you hold, and where are you going to find the sort of values that you are looking for that are going to be valuable and useful, and people are going to see value in? Kilman too has written about organisational cultures, and he proposes a number of models for organisational culture. He says that cultures have values, and it's important to articulate what are the values that you set out to achieve. Secondly, cultures have assumptions. What do you assume? Thirdly, what are the symbols that you use? And then fourthly, what are some of the artifacts that you could use? Can I get you to write down these four terms? So firstly, what are the values? Secondly, what are the assumptions? Thirdly, what are the symbols? And fourthly, what are the physical artifacts that you can see there? So firstly, the values are important. And so church that I've been involved recently, one of the things that they would see is new life in Jesus. So there's a focus on Jesus. There's a focus on Bible. There's a focus on music. There's a focus on prayer. There's a focus on the instruments. So there's quality instruments. There's quality sound. And there's a focus on prayer meetings. And so people gather for prayer meetings, and you can forward your prayer needs often. So see, these are some of the things that are the values that are held. And central to this is finding life in Jesus. Now think next, and you may have different values. You may be a youth leader, women's worker. Think about the values that you hold and begin to write down some of these values. So firstly, Kilman and Saxton say the values are important. What do you value in the organisation that you are in, or you're leading or participating in? Secondly, what are the assumptions that are made? One of the assumptions I think that we would encourage is to meet at least once a week. So we have a weekend meeting. And in the weekend meeting, it's 1 hour, 30 minutes. And so these are some of the assumptions that are made about how we're going to meet. Also, one of the assumptions would be that you likely meet in a home group, a house group, and again, that would be once a week, and it could be 1 hour and 30 minutes. So that again would be similar. And then there would be other assumptions that the sort of music, so we make certain assumptions about the music, and that you like guitar music and you like the songs. Other assumptions would be that you are going to want to be born again through faith in Jesus. So these are some of the assumptions. One would be that we're outreaching. So we're open to outreach, we're not closed off, and we're outreaching others. So they're assumptions, and you could write down other assumptions that you have. So thirdly, in Kilman's book, he talks about the symbols that we have. And so there are certain symbols. And so some of the symbols, we have a stage. And so the musicians are on the stage. We begin with prayer. So that might be another symbol that we have, that we value prayer. We stand for the Bible reading. So we honor the word of God. There are other symbols, the clothing. So we agree on what's reasonable clothing that we should wear. And so all of these are part of symbols that are present. And then there's the artifacts. When you walk in, we have water available. So we want to show that we care. We have a news sheet available. We have video screen. On the video screen, we put up announcements. This is what's happening. So all of these things can be announcements. So notice these 4 things. Firstly, there are the values that we hold. Secondly, there are the assumptions. This is what we assume in our culture of church. Thirdly, there are symbols that communicate the importance of the Bible, the importance of prayer. There are a number of other symbols that we have. And then there is the presentation itself, the way things present. So these are all part of the culture that we communicate. And Kilman, in his book, writes about these values that are held. And this is another of the resources, Kilman and Saxton, culture. And in any business or an organization at university, they study these areas in that they want to equip people as leaders to be able to build effective culture. Culture is about what we believe in common, about the attitudes we share. Culture is about the views that we hold in common one with another. And the leader is often responsible for reminding people of the culture and encouraging the culture. Interestingly, when we get a change of leader, we often get a change of culture. And recently, I've seen a church where there has been a change of leader. And each time over the last 4 changes of leader, there have been changes of culture. The first one was very charismatic, and he believed a great deal in healing. He was very innovative. The second leader, who then came in about 5 years later, he was more cautious. He maintained things. He was less outgoing. And then a third leader came in, and he was very relational. That is, the emphasis was on caring for one another. And so that was his emphasis. And then more recently, we've had another dynamic church pastor, leader come in who's very dynamic with his ideas, and he does a lot of new things. And he probably has new cans of paint and repaints everything. And so there's a lot of change taking place under this leader. So, four different leaders brought four different cultures. And it's important to understand what are the cultures that you as a leader are comfortable with? What are the cultures that you would like to work with and to build? Another resource that's useful is Robbins, Millett, and Cassiope and Walters Marsh, and their book on culture reminds us further of further values in culture, and their resource is a reminder of some of these aspects of culture in organisations. So they have written on organisational behaviour and culture in organisations. They remind us of some of the different aspects of culture that all come together. And they remind us that there are things that can easily be seen and known in an organisation, but there's a number of things that are less well known and more complex, and we need to be able to work with those. And so they remind us that there's quite a complexity in the culture that we are going to be a part of. So organisational culture includes people, includes a team, it includes our values. All of these things combine together. And the organisational book by Robbins includes a number of different aspects of culture that are valuable and important and worth considering. They remind us of the importance of building identity. What is it that you are proud of, happy about? What is it that excites you? What's the identity? And so, in the two or three churches near me, they each have a different culture. One's very outreach and missions oriented, that's its identity. Another is very caring and gentle, that's its identity. Another one is very dynamic and church planting, that's its identity. So each group has a different identity and culture. Secondly, they remind us that this sense of vision brings people together. Thirdly, they remind us that it also differentiates us from the other groups around. But at the same time, each of these values and cultures has a liability. People won't join if they don't fit into that sense of culture that they see as value. There's much more that we could say about culture, but I think that's given us plenty to work with. So, the assignment for today, so assignment 7, I want you to discuss the nature and importance of culture and the ways leaders can help to build culture. So again, we're looking at 100 to 300 words, and we're also looking at 3 scholarly references, such as the ones that we have mentioned today. And you can find more by going to Google Scholar. And if you go to Google Scholar, you could put in Christian or church and culture. So we could look at church and organizational culture, or we could just put church and culture, and that would bring up a number of resources. You can also go to Google Books and find some resources there. So if we go to church and organizational culture and go to Google Books, then we would find some resources under Google Books, and that would help us to locate some resources there. And so these are some of the books that have been written on church and culture. Samuel Chand, Cracking Your Church's Culture Code, is another that has been written. And so you can find value in that as well. And you can read part of that. So that's another of the books on church and culture. So assignment 7, discuss the nature and importance of culture and the ways leaders can help to build culture. And as we talk about culture, we are talking about different levels of culture. There is the minute level, the small level, which is family, or it is a person and the culture that they value. And so in each family and each person holds to a certain culture. This is the minute small level. And then above that, we have each group has a culture. And then above that, there is the church and there's the organization. So there's organizations and churches have culture. Now, within the church and organization, there are smaller groups, and the music group and the youth group and the old people's group may have 3 different cultures, because there are 3 different cultures there. And then more broadly, there are different cultures. And so there might be, within a town or city, there might be a Christian culture. And then there could be a Hindu culture. And then there could be a Buddhist culture. And so if I were to go into 3 different houses and there were 3 different religious participations there, they could have 3 different cultures. And then there could be a non-believer culture. So there's 4 different cultures, and there can be even more. So we've got different cultures. And then there could be a national culture. And then if I go south to India, there's a different culture in North India than South India. And there's a different culture in West India and East India. So you've got different cultures in different places, but on a small local level, you have the culture of each person, family, group, and then the culture of the church, and within it, smaller culture. So there's a number of different levels of culture there. And most importantly, we begin with the question, what is culture? And it's the things that we cultivate. So the word culture comes from to cultivate, develop, and it's the range of aspects of our lives and our shared lives. And so we cultivate words, language. And so different groups use different language. If you're a football player, there's a certain culture that you cultivate because you're part of that sports group. If you're a cricket player, there's a culture and language that you cultivate. So different groups. Recently, I know someone who's joined a drama group, and actors, they have a certain culture, the way they do things. So each group has a different culture. Then there are the physical structures. So if you're an actor, you've got the stage and you've got the practice and all of those things that are part of the culture There's the physical structure that's there, and each church has a different structure. So does that give you some things to work with in the task that we have? In that our task sets out to look at these different aspects of culture. So assignment 7, discuss the nature and importance of culture and the ways leaders can help to build culture. And we could add what sort of culture? You could actually say a healthy, flourishing culture. And I could say a godly culture, a Christian culture, a Jesus-centered culture. All of these things could help to develop a mission statement, couldn't they? This could lead to a mission statement. That is, what is the mission of our group? What are we about? So are there any questions about the task? That's good. So thank you, each one. Thank you for your attention to details. It's a little more challenging today's task that we've covered, but I think we've got some great insights. We've also touched on some great resources, and these can really help us. So I look forward to catching up tomorrow. Let me briefly pray. Heavenly Father, I do thank you for the opportunity to share and to listen. And I pray that you'd use what we've learned in order that we might be better equipped for all the tasks you call us to. Amen. Amen. So thank you, each one. Look forward to
Thank you,
catching up
sir.
again tomorrow. Bless you, each one. Thank you.
See you tomorrow. Bye bye, sir. Have a
See you.
nice day ahead. May God bless you.